On that story, we're going to turn to some politics now. Some new poll numbers show Hillary Clinton still leading in Iowa, the former Secretary of State holding steady over her closest rival, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. And the latest Quinnipiac poll is virtually unchanged since October. Clinton has 51%. Sanders is about 10 points behind. Martin O'Malley a distant third. Our senior political correspondent, Mike Emanuel, is live in Washington with more. Mike?
Well, hi, Jenna. The latest polling out of Iowa suggests the Democratic race in the Hawkeye state is essentially frozen, showing little sign of movement. The frontrunner, Hillary Clinton, has been campaigning in Colorado and also doing some fundraising. With terrorism front and center after the Paris attack, Clinton spoke last night about the fight against ISIS.
By bringing together a coalition of other countries and people who share our belief that this kind of terrorist network has to be stopped. But at the same time, let's remember who we are, remember our values, remember the kind of people we are.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders says the U.S. and its allies have got to be supportive to our friends in the Middle East. But Sanders says he agrees with Jordan's King Abdullah, who says the boots on the ground must be, quote, Muslim boots.
While international terrorism is by definition an international issue, at the end of the day, the Muslim countries in that region have got to stand up and take the lead in fighting against ISIS and fighting for the soul of Islam.
Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley has been critical of Clinton in recent days, suggesting her approach is still stuck in the Cold War and that she has lacked vision when it comes to the Middle East. O'Malley has talked about protecting this country.
One of the sad things about democracies is that we can become complacent. So this is not just a matter of attacking Daesh or ISIL there in Syria and Iraq, but we also have to improve our homeland security here at home, improve information sharing.
So far, the other Democrats have struggled to cut into Clinton's lead, at least in Iowa. Jenna?
Mike, thank you.
We are just 2 months away now from the Iowa caucuses, and on the Republican side, it is still a very crowded field. So where does this race stand now as we head into the holidays? Larry Sabato is director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. He's been looking into his crystal ball. So on the Republican side, any surprises at this point, Larry?
John, there have been some changes. We're starting to see some changes. Now, we don't know whether they'll be sustained. The number one change is that Ted Cruz has been moving up and Ben Carson has been moving down. And, of course, Marco Rubio has also been moving up, but at a more gradual pace. And that's especially true in Iowa. Remember, that's the one that starts it off, and no matter what people will say now about New Hampshire or South Carolina or the big SEC primary on March 1st, it really matters what Iowa does and then how New Hampshire voters react to Iowa, and then they'll vote, and then South Carolina will vote. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. Each group of voters in each state is looking back at what's already taken place.
We should note that there tend to be a lot of pendulum swings in those early states, especially, I mean, right up to voting day, right?
Absolutely, particularly Iowa and New Hampshire. New Hampshire is famous for this in particular. They can turn on a dime. Remember back in 2008 when supposedly Barack Obama, after his big Iowa victory, just a few days later New Hampshire was voting and he was supposed to clean up and shut down the nomination race. New Hampshire voters said no. They frequently say no to whatever the momentum is coming out of Iowa. And remember, Trump is still leading everywhere, but his leads are smaller in Iowa and New Hampshire. If his momentum is upset, it's likely to come in one or both of those states.
Yeah, I noted in our first hour that at this point 8 years ago, Rudy Giuliani led by more than double digits, 28 to 14% over John McCain, who went on to win the nomination that year. Trump has big support nationally, and he's leading in Iowa, but Iowa is a state that rewards a ground game. They reward, a lot of handshaking, a lot of personal appearances. How does Donald Trump stand in that regard?
Well, he's certainly been to Iowa repeatedly, and he's had some big rallies there. But as you note, Iowa has frequently rewarded candidates that have hit all 99 counties. You know, the old joke about an Iowa voter is that the Iowa voter is undecided until the 5th time he meets the candidates. So, you know, they're voters who are used to a lot of up-close and personal contact. New Hampshire voters, that's somewhat true, but it's become less so. New Hampshire's become more television-oriented.
Let's take a look at the Quinnipiac University poll results from Iowa, and they show how tight this race has become. Donald Trump at 25% on top of the heap. Ted Cruz there with 23% now. Ben Carson at 18, Marco Rubio at 13, Rand Paul and Jeb Bush with 5 and 4%. Obviously, it's a very tight race, and as you say, it has gotten tighter in the last week or so.
I think what's happened mainly, there have been a lot of counter trends and there's movement from this category to that category, but if I had to pick one that was most important, it would be that Ted Cruz seems to be pulling percentage points off of Ben Carson. So as Ben Carson declines, Ted Cruz has gained. Now, what has happened can reverse itself. You know, it is Thanksgiving and the voting doesn't start until February 1st. But this is a significant change because for months, nothing seemed to happen.
Let's put up the New Hampshire numbers quickly on the Republican side. Donald Trump has a much more comfortable lead there, 22% to 11% over Marco Rubio. Ted Cruz in 4th place there at 9%. And as you look at those numbers, Larry, talk about what happens after these two states. Do some of these contenders potentially drop out, and does the support solidify among some of the others?
To tell you the truth, John, I expect candidates to fall like flies in February. I don't see how most candidates who are turning in performances in the single digits can survive, even if they have money in the bank. As Scott Walker proved, he had money in the bank, but he couldn't survive. At a certain point, the donors and the volunteers and your other backers kind of just fade away because they realize you're not going to win. So we're going to see a lot of change in the month of February and then kick off March in a giant way with that SEC primary, not just in the Deep South, but in many other states around the country.
And the election is less than a year away now. Larry Sabato from the Center for Politics. Happy Thanksgiving, Larry. Thanks for spending part of your day with us.
Same to you, John.